a huge increase in points, particularly those from long range, and a very clear and obvious focus on possession. That's before we even mention the weight of slitters or the size of hurleys. So here's what a number of high-profile people involved in the game have had to say about this recently.
I think there's an awful lot of rubbish, Dara, to be honest about you, spoken about hurling. You know, some people are giving out about teams scoring 30 points.
It does appear that the game has changed in the last 4 months whilst we've all been at home, and somebody has decided to take the tackle out of the game.
Looking over the broad spectrum of games, I mean, the volume of frees, the stop-start nature.
The referees are getting a lot of criticism about the amount of frees, but when you look at it, and even you look at the reaction of the players here, in the main, these are actually frees that the players are committing. And I think for the first time in a long time, it appears as if the referees are refereeing the rules by the laws of the game. The tackle is not defined in hurling.
The use of the spare hand is a problem, but I suppose there's a difference here. So if somebody grabs somebody's hand and doesn't allow them release the ball, that's a free. But I mean, what else do you do to spare hand if someone is running at you?
I don't know any hurling person that would agree with some of the rules that's going on now. And it's on the other side, I'd say, Darrell, it's very, very tough on referees to interpret those properly and try and suit everybody here.
We're seeing glorified free-taking competitions.
The referee's interpretation of the rules and our understanding of that is at an all-time low.
We just have to see how the championship plan out. There was massive scores again today, but sure, you know, that's the game of hurling. It's a game of instinct. You play it fast, and the ball is travelling, and you know, really, I suppose when crowds come back, we'll really see excitement as well from the time at home. Like, you know,
I think it is in a good state. I think there was maybe a bit of an overreaction at the start of the league about the frees, etc. It seems to happen every year, so it's going to wash itself out, and it looks like it is doing so again.
Okay, but in fairness, it's not just been the last few weeks, as Shane O'Neill is saying there, and it's not just the rules. This has been happening over the last few years. People have been raising questions. So is there an issue? And have the sort of grumblings we've been hearing, is that something that has always been there?
I think the free-taking competition is a valid point. When I sat and watched Tipperary play Limerick in the Gaelic grounds, I was looking, going, what's going on with all the frees? You know, I could nearly sense that the players are getting frustrated. You know, let me go, let me hurl. He's only dragging me back a little bit kind of stuff, right? But sometimes an organisation decided, there's the rule book now, the rest are told. You're implementing the rules to letter law. A free is a free, forget about the advantage. For me, I'd rather have seen the advantage rule still be played left in the game. But once you drew the line in the sand that this is a free, it's a free, then we are having free-taking competition. Didn't see it as much today now, to be fair. But during the summer, if there's any drag back at all around the middle of the field, the referee is instructed he has to give a free, and that's what we're going to see again, unfortunately, in a lot of ways, and I don't see it changing, to be honest with you.
Okay, that's the rules, and we're going to get to those in a couple of minutes. But the game in general, the thing that Donal Óg said last night that stood out for you was, what is a traditionalist?
Yeah, and look, it's a very passionate topic, first of all, Joanne, a very passionate subject here, so it's very difficult to espouse how you truly feel about it. It's a topic we're all highly emotive about. You look at people like Cheddar Plunkett and John Coyley and Shane O'Neill, Liam Cahill, brilliant hurling people who are, like, we have to ask ourselves, what do we want, I suppose, right? So you put yourself in a dressing room situation, or you put yourself in your parish or your club situation. You want a game, I suppose, that's laced and underpinned by integrity, honesty, savagery, love, courage, an intangible link between supporters, you know, management, players, and you want that passion to be just part of everything we do. And I think that's the main topic, right? And that was in danger or in jeopardy, perhaps, of, and it's very hard to kind of passionately kind of articulate it in the manner that Cheddar Plunkett did there. You know, we also want a game, I suppose, that as well as those underpinning principles, that you have the ability to grow, to evolve, to embrace change, not in a manner that's restrictive or reductive or is in any way kind of quenching what people want to learn or where society is going, if you like. I think it's the constant, or it's the possible fusion of those underlying principles that I've spoken about and that passion we all have for the game with the embracing of the change. And it's very hard, and sometimes I think we're sceptical when John Coyley comes out or Cheddar comes out. I said they're only trying to look after their own ends, you know, as was suggested with Limerick. Oh sure, they play on the edge. We want the edge. Well, I certainly do. We want the edge. We want it on the edge. And I think Coyley is such a decent man, and Cheddar they're decent people, and they want it for the love of the game as opposed to just their own ends. And I think that sometimes we need to be less sceptical about what they're saying. I think there's a genuineness in what Shane O'Neill, Liam Cahill, Cheddar and that John Kiley just said there.
Let's talk about another thing that's very obvious that has changed, and that's the equipment. I mean, it has changed, obviously, as you'd expect from 1915. Thank you very much for bringing these in. The 1915 All-Ireland final, you can see the difference in size in the hurleys, and there are football boots, and we've got the whistle as well, from the referee's whistle.
Yeah, it's very, very grateful, Joanne. Today, Jack Finlay, who was captain of the 1915 Laois winning team, I met his grandson today, John, and he gave me the replica of Ned McAvoy's hurley from Abbey Leagues Club, and the boots that his own grandfather wore in the 1915 All-Ireland final, and the whistle that actually ironically was used by Willie Walsh of Waterford, man, who Welsh Park was named after. So delighted to have him here. The boots in particular and the hurley stand out in terms of the difference of boss size, etc. The boots are no Adidas Predators or Copa Mundials, but you saw what they had to kind of put up with, I suppose, in terms of how they were able to, and it didn't make the game any less enjoyable for them, if you like, and that's important to kind of embrace too.
But even if you go back 15, 20 years, the difference in the size of the hurley is huge, and the obvious one, and some people are calling for a heavier slitter or for the rim on the slitter to be changed. Is this a massive issue?
It's an issue in that, I suppose, when you take out the point that there's 30 and 35 points being scored a game, we want to see more goals. Up until last night, we'll say, or Friday night, that was a big narrative around the game. It might have changed after today's goal fest that we had. But this case of a free taker, take Patrick Horgan, take whoever, Jason Ford, having an oversized boss, which is fine within the rules, standing on his own 45, looking up and pinging it with a bit to spare over the bar. People are starting to go, 1 second here now, I'd rather if it dropped in the square, there'd be a skirmish, and we'd have a bit of passion around the game. The ball, I think, will be looked at some stage. I think the rims is probably where they'll go with it, and they'll try to make it a bit more like a shuttlecock, we'll call it, to resist the air a bit more. They're more like tennis balls now. But again, though, players will adapt and find a way. Like we saw it again today, the ball went into the full forward line, they started to get more goals. Management teams are obsessing all the time, how do I get better? They'll find a way, and they mightn't have shown all their hand in the league either, Joanne, so we might see a bit more, and I hope we do, but certainly the equipment is light years away from what we're seeing there.
Okay, so Donal Logue said last night, as you heard in that little clip there, that there is no defined tackle in the rule book. So we've got our rule book out, and this is what it says. So here you go. It says that a player may tackle an opponent for the ball, and it goes on to say that you can also shoulder charge, but there's not much more of it apart from that until you go to the very end of the rule book, and it has a definition section, and in the definition section it's this tiny little thing, a few lines here, that says the tackle is any attempt to dispossess or reduce the advantage of an opponent within the rules of fair play, with the exception of the charge, which is fair. The tackle is aimed at the ball and not the player. Now, under aggressive fouls, Brendan, it does go on to say that you can't trip. It says you can't get involved in any rough play of any manner either. So what do you make of that?
Well, I think that if Derek, for example, is running at me, the question is, how am I supposed to stop him? Right? If I go in with the shoulder, and this is an example we took today when Ryan Mullally coming out, he hit the Kilkenny player, and everyone's going, great physicality, look, he got a knock on the shoulder, he just put him off balance. In this case, he's not playing the ball, he's played the man, and the second Laois player coming in has actually tugged on the shoulder. But it's a contrast, Derek.
Yeah, and look, there's lots of debate about the free hand tackle, I suppose. I just want to slow down here and watch Tig trying to dispossess with the hand the ball, okay? And watch the softness of Jamie Barron here in terms of how he leaves Jersey Band. I think that's perfect. And look at Tig de Burka here. This is the free arm being used with absolute brilliance. I think it's a brilliant skill. I think it's a skill that should be used. And here's another example of it here. I'm on the Waterford buzz here tonight, so watch Shane Bennett dispossessing Dee O'Keefe with his hand here. Bang. I would feel that is an absolutely brilliant skill, and it's a skill that's practiced in every field nowadays, Joanne, in terms of if you're coaching team, and in fairness to Donal Logue, he alluded to that last night. He said the fact that, look, we're all trying to coach with the spare hand, how to tackle with the spare hand, but there's a difference, a crucial difference. He's right around the dragging and pulling of the elbow, etc., and the pulling of the jersey, but the hand can be used to dispossess when you're going for the ball according to rule. But I actually like the greyness of the rules. I like the greyness of the rules, if you like, in terms of just the general ambiguity that exists with the rule, because it allows for interpretation, I suppose.
Well, it allows for interpretation, which means it allows for inconsistency as well. And
But you must tackle the ball. I think that what's happening now is that our players are so big and strong that someone goes in and they hit somebody's hand here, the shot goes up, the ball pops out. But if somebody was to go here in the hand, not grab, but just try to do that, you're actually tackling the ball. But we're so used to seeing the big guys coming down the middle, a big smack of a wallop of a shoulder. He turns around and gives the pass back. Everyone in the stand is full of adrenaline from the wallop that went in. In the strictest form of the rules, you're not attacking the ball, you're tackling the man. So that's where I think we're seeing the change in the last 2 months.
And in the longer interview with Cheddar today, John, we were lucky enough to hear it. He talked about hurling being a warrior sport. Like, tribalism exists all over Ireland in terms of parish, you know, good and bad tribalism, I suppose. And I think that's crucial. Like, if you're in a dressing room, you're talking about who you represent, what you stand for, you know, putting your bodies on the line. That's the maxim of a dressing room. And we cannot take that away. We cannot take that away because we risk. We cannot take that. It has to be an absolute prerequisite of the game, that putting your body on the line in a fair and honest manner.
Okay, another thing that's really come up in the last little while, physicality's been a big one, and you might be playing for not